You're under arrest for violation and not cooperating with us.
I didn't do any violation. Check the cameras.
What started as a routine traffic stop quickly spiraled into a nightmare of prejudice and power. A man was humiliated, his rights violated, all because of the color of his skin. But the officers had no idea who they were really dealing with. They thought they had arrested just another nobody. They were wrong, and the revenge that followed was more calculated and chilling than anyone could have ever imagined. If you're on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. We uncover real stories that are stranger than fiction. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell for notifications. Now, we're curious, which city are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. The night air was cold and carried the smell of rain on asphalt. A sleek, dark car, its engine barely a whisper, glided to a stop under a broken streetlight on the outskirts of the city. The neighborhood was quiet, a place of closed doors and drawn curtains, where people kept to themselves and didn't ask questions. Out of the driver's side stepped a man. He was tall, with a tired but strong posture. He wore simple, dark jeans and a plain jacket, clothes that spoke of comfort, not wealth. This was Marcus Thorne. He had just spent 14 hours in back-to-back meetings, his mind still buzzing with budgets and city planning proposals. All he wanted was to get the box of his grandmother's old photo albums from her now-empty house before the new owners took possession the next day. He fumbled for the keys in his pocket, the metal jingling softly in the silent street. He never made it to the front door. The sudden, blinding white light of a flashlight beam hit his eyes, making him flinch and raise a hand to his face. The light was attached to the top of a police cruiser he hadn't even heard approach. Its engine was now off, but its presence was a loud, intimidating thing in the quiet dark. "Evening," a voice said, flat and without warmth. Two officers stepped out of the car. The first was older, his face set in hard, impatient lines, his nameplate reading Henderson. The younger one, Dawson, hung back slightly, his eyes constantly moving, looking at the house, the car, the man. "Good evening, officers," Marcus said, lowering his hand slowly, his voice calm and polite despite the sudden rush of annoyance he felt. He was exhausted, and this was a delay he did not need. "This your vehicle?" Henderson asked, shining the light onto Marcus's car. It was clean, expensive, and looked very out of place on the cracked pavement of this street. "It is," Marcus replied. "This your house?" The light flicked toward the small, dark building. "It was my grandmother's. I'm just here to collect some of her things." Henderson took a step closer. "You got some identification on you? Registration for the vehicle?" "Of course," Marcus said. He moved his hand toward his back pocket, the movement slow and deliberate. He had been through this before long ago in a different life. He knew the drill. He knew the unspoken rules. Be polite. Move slowly. Don't give them a reason. Henderson snatched the wallet from his hand before he could even open it. The younger officer, Dawson, came around the car, his hand resting lightly on the butt of his gun. Henderson flipped through the wallet, his flashlight illuminating the contents. He pulled out the driver's license, studying it, then looking back at Marcus's face. "Marcus Thorne," Henderson read aloud. He tossed the wallet back to Marcus, who caught it awkwardly. "You're a long way from home, Mr. Thorne. This is a nice car for this part of town. What's your business here, really?" "I told you," Marcus said, his patience beginning to wear thin. "My grandmother passed. I'm clearing out her things." Henderson shone the light directly into the car's interior, the beams sweeping over the leather seats. "Pop the trunk." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Marcus felt a familiar, cold knot form in his stomach. The feeling of being presumed guilty, of being out of place in your own skin. He pressed the button on his key fob, and the trunk lid swung open silently. There was nothing inside but a single, medium-sized cardboard box, its flaps folded shut. Henderson walked over and roughly pulled the flaps open, shining his light inside. He rummaged through it with one hand, pulling out a handful of old black-and-white photographs, letting them fall back into the box like trash. "Please be careful with those," Marcus said, his voice tighter now. "They're family memories." Henderson ignored him. He turned back, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. Seems a little light for clearing out her things, don't you think? You sure you weren't just stopping by for a different reason? This neighborhood has a bit of a problem with break-ins. Folks looking for easy scores in empty houses. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. Officer, I have the paperwork right inside if you'd like to see it. The real estate listing, the bill of sale. It's all in there on the kitchen counter. Henderson took another step closer, now well inside Marcus's personal space. His voice dropped, losing any pretense of professional detachment. I don't think I need to see any paperwork. I know your type. You get a little money, you get a nice car, and you think the rules don't apply to you. You think you could just cruise through any neighborhood you like. The younger officer, Dawson, shifted his weight uncomfortably but said nothing. He just watched. My type? Marcus asked, the words hanging in the cold air. You know exactly what I mean, Henderson said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. You all look the same in the dark anyway. Now turn around. Put your hands on the roof of the car. The world seemed to shrink to the cold metal under Marcus's palms. He heard the click of the handcuffs a second before the cold steel closed around his wrists, too tight, biting into his skin. The procedure was a blur of humiliation. He was patted down roughly, his personal space utterly violated. He was led to the back of the cruiser, a cage of hard plastic and stale smells. He ducked his head as Henderson pushed it down, guiding him into the seat with unnecessary force. As Henderson slammed the door shut, sealing him inside, Marcus heard him lean close to the window, his voice low enough so only his partner could hear, but the cruiser's internal microphone picked up every word, a detail Marcus noted with a strange, detached clarity. Another one thinking he's a big shot, Henderson muttered to Dawson, an ugly laugh in his throat. Thinks his fancy car makes him somebody. They never learn. Just another NR in cuffs at the end of the night. Makes the stats look good. The words didn't land like a punch. They settled like a deep, cold poison in his veins. He didn't react. He didn't say a word. He just sat in the dark, smelling the faint odor of sweat and disinfectant, listening to the two officers chat casually up front as they filled out paperwork with his name on it. He watched his own car, his grandmother's precious photos still scattered in the trunk, grow smaller through the rear window as they drove him away. He was processed at the precinct. The bright fluorescent lights, the bored desk sergeant, the routine questions. They took his fingerprints. They took his photograph. They placed him in a holding cell to wait for what they called his one phone call. The cell was cold, with a concrete bench. He sat there, alone, the sound of Henderson's voice echoing in his mind. Not the anger in it, but the sheer casual certainty. The absolute belief that Marcus was nothing and would always be nothing. He finally made his call. Not to a lawyer. Not to his wife. He dialed a number he knew by heart. A direct line that was answered on the second ring. Chief Edwards, a calm, professional voice said, "Bill, it's Marcus." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Mayor? Is everything all right? Where are you?" "I'm currently in a holding cell at the Central Precinct," Marcus said, his voice low, measured, and utterly calm. "I've been arrested. I need you to come down here yourself. And Bill, don't say a word to anyone about who I am." Not yet. The silence that followed was longer this time, thick with confusion and dawning horror. "I'm on my way. Right now." 20 minutes later, the station erupted in silent, panicked chaos. Police Chief William Edwards, a man built like a retired linebacker, his face pale and his jaw clenched, stormed through the precinct doors. He ignored the salutes and the questioning looks, making a beeline for the duty sergeant's desk. A hushed, frantic conversation ensued. The sergeant's eyes went wide, flicking toward the holding cells. He fumbled for a set of keys. When the cell door clanged open, Marcus looked up slowly. Chief Edwards stood there, his expression a mixture of fury and profound embarrassment. "Mr. Mayor, sir, I have no words," Edwards stammered, his usual authority gone. Marcus stood up, smoothing down his jacket. "It's all right, Bill. I like my personal effects back now. And I'd like to see the arrest report and the dash and body cam footage from Officers Henderson and Dawson. In your office. Now." The walk through the precinct was a study in shock. Officers and clerks froze as they saw their chief personally escorting the man they had just booked through the booking area. Whispers started, questions were mouthed. The duty sergeant, with trembling hands, returned Marcus's wallet, keys, and phone. Marcus took them without a word, his face an unreadable mask. In the chief's office, with the door closed, Marcus Thorne, the mayor of the great city of Meridian, finally allowed himself to sit. He watched the footage on the chief's computer monitor. He saw himself, tired and polite. He saw Henderson, aggressive and arrogant. He heard the racist remark, crystal clear from the cruiser's audio, a vile, permanent stain on the recording. Chief Edwards looked like he might be sick. Sir, on behalf of the entire department, I can't apologize enough. This is a disgrace. Henderson will be suspended without pay effective immediately, and Dawson too for not intervening. Internal affairs will. Marcus held up a hand, stopping him. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, but it filled the room, cold and heavy as stone. No, Bill. Chief Edwards blinked. Sir, Officer Henderson will not be suspended. Officer Dawson will not be reprimanded. But the remark, the false arrest. I heard it, Marcus said, his eyes fixed on the frozen image of Henderson's smug face on the screen. A suspension is a vacation. A reprimand is a slap on the wrist. They'll be back on the job in a few months, angrier and more entitled than before. They will learn nothing. He turned to look at the police chief, and for the first time, Edwards saw the fire that had been banked behind the mayor's calm eyes. It was not a fire of rage, but of something far more determined, far more patient. I don't want them punished, Bill, Marcus said, his words slow and precise. I want them promoted. The silence in the police chief's office was heavier than any sound. Chief Edwards stared at his mayor, his mind refusing to process the words he had just heard. The computer screen still glowed, frozen on the sneering face of Officer Henderson, a man who had just committed career suicide and didn't even know it. Promoted, Edwards finally managed to say, the words sounding foreign and wrong in his mouth. Sir, with all due respect, I must be misunderstanding you. You want me to promote the officers who did this? He gestured weakly at the screen, his face a mask of confusion. Marcus Thorne leaned back in the leather chair, steepling his fingers. The fluorescent light of the office gleamed on his knuckles. He looked utterly calm, a stark contrast to the storm of emotion in the room. You heard me correctly, Bill. I want you to put together a formal commendation. A new, high-profile community outreach initiative. I'm thinking we call it the Bridge Builder Program. And I want Officers Henderson and Dawson to be its first participants, its public faces. Edwards sank into his own chair, the leather groaning in protest. He ran a hand over his face. A commendation? For what? For exemplary bigotry? Sir, the union will have a field day with this. The public, if this footage ever gets out. The footage will not get out, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet losing none of its power. You will secure it. All of it. The dash cam, the body cam, the audio from the cruiser, the booking footage. You will place it under a mayoral seal of confidentiality. This incident, as far as the public record is concerned, never happened. He paused, letting the order sink in. He was no longer just a man who had been wronged. He was the chief executive of the city, and his words were policy. The official story will be that these two officers demonstrated exceptional judgment in a difficult situation. That their dedication to proactive policing, while perhaps a bit overzealous, is exactly the kind of initiative we need to build trust in underserved communities. Chief Edwards could only shake his head, a slow, bewildered motion. Build trust? With them? Henderson is a known problem. A locker room lawyer with a nasty streak. Dawson, he's young. He just follows Henderson's lead. Putting them in a community outreach program is like putting arsonists in charge of a fireworks stand. A small, cold smile touched Marcus's lips. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Exactly. The single word hung in the air, and for the first time, Chief Edwards began to understand. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't a lesson in tolerance. This was something else entirely. This was a trap, and the bait was their own arrogance. They will be given new assignments, Marcus continued, his tone becoming brisk, administrative. They are to be removed from patrol duties immediately. Henderson will be given the title of Senior Community Liaison Officer. Dawson will be his deputy. Their primary duty will be to attend every neighborhood watch meeting, every community center gathering, every public forum in the city's most challenging districts. They will be required to give speeches on police-community relations. They will shake hands. They will listen to complaints. They will smile for the cameras. He leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his gaze locking onto the chiefs. They will be celebrated, given awards at city ceremonies. Their pictures will be in the newspaper. They will be held up as the new, reformed face of the Meridian Police Department. And you, Bill, will personally oversee their new duties. You will ensure they attend every single event. There will be no excuses, no sick days, no hiding behind paperwork. Is that clear? The horror on Chief Edwards' face was now mixed with a dawning, reluctant awe. He was watching a master at work. The punishment was not a cell, not a suspension. It was a spotlight. It was forcing a man who lived in the shadows of his own prejudice to stand continuously and publicly in the one place he would find most torturous, the center of a community he despised, forced to pretend he respected them. It's diabolical, Edwards whispered, almost to himself. It is justice. Marcus corrected him, his voice flat. The kind they will understand. Now, make the arrangements. I want them in your office at 8 a.m. tomorrow for their new briefing. And Bill, he added, standing up and straightening his jacket, not a word of the truth to anyone. As far as they are concerned, they are being rewarded for their excellent police work. Let them believe it. The next morning, at precisely 8 o'clock, Officers Henderson and Dawson stood in the chief's office. Henderson's posture was smug, his chest puffed out. He had heard the rumors swirling through the precinct all night. That the chief himself had sprung the perp from the holding cell, that it was some kind of big mistake. He assumed it was a political mess, some connected guy they'd accidentally picked up. He expected, at worst, a mild reprimand for not checking the guy's background more thoroughly. Maybe even an apology from the chief for the inconvenience. Dawson, however, was pale and nervous. He hadn't slept. The sound of his partner's voice saying those words played over and over in his mind. He had a sick feeling in his stomach that this was not going to be a simple apology. Chief Edwards stood before them, his face an unreadable slab of granite. "Officers," he began, his voice devoid of any warmth. "After a review of last night's incident, a decision has been made at the highest level of city government." Henderson couldn't help himself. A smirk tugged at his lips. "Highest level, sir? Don't tell me we accidentally arrested the governor's cousin." He chuckled, a dry, harsh sound. The chief's eyes hardened. "You will be silent, Officer Henderson, and you will listen. Your actions last night, your proactive engagement, have been noted. The mayor's office itself has taken an interest." Dawson's eyes widened. "The mayor, a new initiative is being launched," Edwards continued, ignoring the interruption. "The Bridge Builder Program. It is designed to foster a new era of trust and cooperation between this department and the community. Your demonstrated enthusiasm has been selected as the ideal catalyst for this program. Effective immediately, you are both reassigned." He slid 2 folders across his desk. Henderson picked his up, his smirk fading into a confused frown as he read the contents. "Community liaison? What is this, a desk job?" "Sir, I'm a street cop. I don't do meetings." "You do now," Edwards said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Your patrol duties are terminated. Your new assignment is to attend community functions. You will be the public face of this department's renewed commitment to its citizens. You will be given a commendation at next week's city council meeting. There will be press." Henderson's face flushed a dark red. "A commendation? For what?" "For arresting some." He caught himself, glancing at the chief's stony expression. "For doing our job?" "For the precise reasons stated in the folder, Officer," Edwards said coldly. "You are to report to the Community Affairs Division at 0900 hours. They will brief you on your first event, at the town hall meeting in the Crestview neighborhood tonight. You will both be speaking. The color drained from Henderson's face. Crestview was a predominantly black neighborhood, known for its tense history with the police. The town hall meetings were notoriously fiery, a place where community anger was voiced directly and loudly. Crestview, Henderson sputtered. Sir, that's a hostile environment. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious, Edwards replied. This assignment comes directly from the mayor's office. Refusal is not an option. It would be considered insubordination of the highest order, resulting in immediate termination. Do I make myself clear? Dawson, who had been silently reading his folder, looked up, his young face etched with a new kind of fear. He wasn't afraid of an angry crowd. He was afraid of the terrifying, invisible machinery that had just ensnared them. This didn't feel like a reward. It felt like being fed to the wolves with a smile. Crystal clear, sir, Dawson said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Henderson just stood there, his jaw working, his fists clenched at his sides. The smugness was gone, replaced by a dawning, horrifying realization. He was being taken off the streets, put in a suit, and paraded in front of the very people he looked down upon. He was being forced to pretend. This was worse than any suspension, any hearing. This was humiliation disguised as honor. Dismissed, Chief Edwards said. The two officers turned and walked out of the office. The precinct buzzed around them, other officers clapping Henderson on the back, offering congratulations on the promotion, joking about his easy new desk job. Henderson didn't hear them. He walked in a daze, the folder feeling like a lead weight in his hand. That night, under the bright, unforgiving lights of the Crestview Community Center, Mayor Marcus Thorne watched from the back of the crowded, noisy room. He stood in the shadows, unseen. On the small stage, perched on folding chairs, sat officers Henderson and Dawson. Henderson wore a cheap, ill-fitting suit, his face a thundercloud of suppressed rage. Dawson looked like a teenager forced to attend a relative's funeral, sweating under his stiff new collar. A community elder was at the microphone, her voice sharp and clear. We're tired of being profiled. We're tired of being stopped for nothing. Were you people going to see us as human beings? The moderator, a flustered city official, gestured to Henderson. Officer Henderson, as the department's new community liaison, would you like to respond? Henderson stood up, the legs of his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every eye in the room was on him. He cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on a point on the far wall. He began to read from a prepared statement, his voice a flat, toneless drone. The Meridian Police Department is committed to serving all citizens with dignity and respect. We believe in proactive policing strategies that foster a collaborative. He was booed. The sound started low, a rumble of discontent, then grew into a wave of open derision. Someone shouted, "We don't want your speeches. We want change." Henderson's face turned purple. He stopped reading, his hands clenching the paper, crumpling it. He looked out at the angry, distrustful faces, and for a split second, his professional mask slipped. His true feelings flashed in his eyes: contempt, anger, and a deep, seething frustration. In the back of the room, Marcus Thorne allowed himself a small, private sip of water. The taste was very, very sweet. This was only the beginning, the first move in a very long game. He watched Henderson struggle, watched him drown in a sea of his own making, and he knew. The revenge had begun, and it was more perfect than any simple firing could ever be. The days turned into a week, and for officers Henderson and Dawson, time lost all meaning. It was no longer measured in shifts or patrols, but in a relentless parade of humiliating public appearances. They were trapped in a golden cage, their handcuffs replaced by clip-on ties and forced smiles. The commendation ceremony at the city council meeting had been a particular kind of hell. Flashbulbs had popped, a few council members had given lukewarm, confused applause, and Mayor Thorne himself had shaken their hands. Henderson had felt the mayor's grip, firm and dry, and for a fleeting second, he had met the man's eyes. There was nothing there. No anger, no satisfaction, just a flat, impenetrable calm that was more terrifying than any glare could ever be. Henderson had looked away first, a cold sweat beating on his neck. Their new world was a circuit of community centers, school auditoriums, and church basements. They were sent to a youth outreach program in the heart of the North Side, where a group of skeptical teenagers grilled them on police brutality while a city photographer snapped pictures for a positive press release. Henderson, reading from his script about opportunities for dialogue, was asked by a sharp-eyed girl of 15, "If you care so much about dialogue, how come you look like you'd rather be anywhere else but here?" The laughter that followed was not kind. Dawson, to his own surprise, was crumbling in a different way. The guilt that had been a small seed the night of the arrest was now a gnawing vine, twisting around his insides. He started actually listening to the people who spoke at these meetings. He heard a mother talk about her son, a college student, being stopped and frisked 3 times in a month for fitting a description. He saw the deep, weary frustration in people's eyes, a feeling he recognized from his own family struggles, just dressed in different clothes. He began to stumble over his prepared lines. Once, at a meeting with a Latino community group, when Henderson gave a canned, dismissive answer about immigration checks, Dawson had quietly added, "I understand why that would make you feel unsafe." Henderson had shot him a look that could curdle milk. The breaking point for Henderson came on a rainy Thursday evening. Their assignment was to attend a banquet for a black fraternity's annual scholarship fundraiser. They were seated at the head table, right next to the podium. The room was full of successful, educated, powerful men and women. Doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, the very people Henderson's worldview had no space for. He drank too much of the free wine, his face growing red and mottled. When the chapter president, a charismatic man in his 50s, finished his speech, he gestured to the 2 officers. "And we're so pleased to have our new friends from the Meridian PD with us tonight, symbolizing a new chapter of unity. Officer Henderson, would you care to say a few words?" Henderson stood up, unsteady. The room fell into a polite, expectant silence. He looked out at the sea of black faces, the sound of his own heart pounding in his ears. The prepared speech, tucked in his pocket, felt like an insult. He decided to wing it, to show them he was a real cop, a straight shooter. "Yeah, thanks," he slurred slightly. It's good to be here. You know, out on the streets, we see a lot of bad elements. And it's important that the good folks, the folks like you all, help us deal with the other ones. The ones who make things difficult for everyone. We can't do our job without you people. I mean, without your help." A frozen silence descended upon the banquet hall. The air grew thick and cold. The chapter president's smile had not moved, but it had become a dangerous, fixed thing. "The other ones," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "And which people would those be, officer?" Henderson, too drunk and too arrogant to sense the precipice he was standing on, plowed ahead. "You know exactly what I mean. The gangbangers, the thugs, the ones who, well, let's just say they don't end up at dinners like this." He gave a weak, attempting to be chummy laugh. It died alone in the dead air. The president nodded slowly. "I see. So, in your professional opinion, the community is divided into good ones, like us having dinner, and bad ones, the thugs. And it is our job to help you police the bad ones who, I assume, all look a certain way." The trap was sprung. Henderson blinked, finally sensing the hostility, but it was far too late. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stood there, exposed and foolish under the bright lights. From the back of the room, Mayor Marcus Thorne, who had been quietly observing the entire event, gave a single, almost imperceptible nod to a man standing near the video camera that was recording the event for the fraternity's archives. The next morning, Henderson and Dawson were summoned to Chief Edwards' office once more. The chief did not offer them a seat. His face was like stone. "The fraternity's national headquarters has filed a formal complaint with the city, the police oversight committee, and the mayor's office," Edwards said, his voice low and furious. He picked up a remote and pointed it at a television screen on his wall. They were kind enough to provide a copy of the footage. The screen lit up. There was Henderson, red-faced and swaying, making his speech. The video was crystal clear, the audio pristine. It captured every damning word, every condescending inflection, the entire cringeworthy display of bigotry. It was a public relations nightmare of the highest order. This is a direct violation of the trust placed in you by this program and by this city. Edwards thundered. The mayor's office is apoplectic. I have half a mind to suspend you both and throw you to the wolves. Henderson, pale and hung over, found a shred of his old defiance. It was a setup. They baited me. That guy with the microphone. He twisted my words. Your words needed no twisting, Henderson. Edward shot back. They stand on their own quite well as a testament to your incompetence and your prejudice. It was then that Mayor Thorne entered the office. He did not knock. He simply opened the door and stepped inside. He was holding a thin file folder. The room went silent. He looked at the frozen image of Henderson on the screen, then at the two officers. Chief, Marcus said, his voice calm, a stark contrast to Edwards's rage. A suspension would be the easy way out. It would allow the press to label this as a bad apple and let the department off the hook. The problem is systemic. It requires a systemic solution. He opened the folder. I've reviewed the performance of the Bridge Builder program. The initial data is concerning. Public trust, according to our surveys, has not improved in the districts where officers Henderson and Dawson have been assigned. Henderson stared, a cold dread seeping into his bones. Data? Surveys? This was being treated like a failed business project. Therefore, Marcus continued, as if discussing a zoning permit. The program needs a more intensive approach, a deeper immersion. Officer, Dawson. Dawson jumped, startled. Sir, you will be enrolled in a semester-long course at the community college. The history of policing in urban America. You will attend every lecture. You will complete every assignment. You will write a final thesis on community-based policing strategies. I will read it myself. Dawson's mouth fell open. He was being sent back to school, like a child. And Officer Henderson, Marcus said, turning his gaze on him. Those eyes were still flat, still calm, but now they held a glint of something inexorable. Your performance indicates a more profound disconnect. You need to understand the community from the ground up. Effective immediately, your assignment is being amended. You're being transferred to the traffic division. Henderson almost laughed in relief. Traffic? Writing tickets? It was mind-numbing, but it was outside. It was away from these endless meetings. Marcus saw the fleeting look of relief, and his cold smile returned. Not as an officer. The traffic division has a public works partnership. You will be attached to a crew. Your new duty will be to maintain and repair the city's red light and speed cameras. He let the sentence hang in the air. Henderson's brain struggled to process it. You will be issued a new uniform. Orange, I believe, is the standard color for public works. Marcus added, his tone conversational. You will report to a foreman. Your hours will be 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. You will be cleaning lenses, checking wiring, and scraping off graffiti. It is hands-on work. It will give you plenty of time to reflect on the importance of following the rules. Henderson felt the world drop out from under him. He was being demoted to a janitor, a common laborer. He would be dressed in orange, up on a ladder in the rain and the heat, cleaning cameras while his former colleagues cruised by in their patrol cars. The humiliation was so complete, so utter, that he had no words. It was a living death for a man like him. Mayor Thorne closed the folder. The press will be told that the Bridge Builder program is being refocused with new, innovative strategies. There will be no mention of the banquet. This is your path to redemption, officers. Embrace it. He turned and left the office, leaving behind a shell-shocked Dawson and a Henderson who looked like he had been physically struck. The revenge was no longer just sweet. It was surgical. It was dismantling them piece by piece, and there was nothing they could do but watch it happen. The orange uniform felt like a second skin of shame. It was stiff, abrasive, and screamed its purpose to the world. Every morning at 4:30, Henderson would put it on in the dark of his garage, avoiding his own reflection in the car window. His new kingdom was a city maintenance truck that smelled of old grease and sweat. His new partners were two city workers, a man named Leo and a woman named Maria, who spoke little to him and mostly to each other in Spanish. They treated him with a neutral, professional indifference that was somehow worse than open hostility. He was a ghost, a piece of equipment to be directed. Henderson, the camera at Elm and Fifth, is flickering. Probably bird crap. Go check it, Leo would say, not even looking up from his clipboard. And Henderson would go. He would climb the ladder, the rungs cold under his gloves, and scrub the dome of the traffic camera with a rag, the city sprawling beneath him. Down below, patrol cars would glide past. Sometimes he'd see cops he knew. They'd look up, do a double take, and then quickly look away, pretending they hadn't seen him. The humiliation was a constant, physical pain. He was a cautionary tale, and everyone knew it, though no one knew the real reason why. One afternoon, stuck in a cherry picker trying to untangle a shredded plastic bag from a camera housing near the freeway, he saw a familiar black car, stopped at the red light. The window was down. Mayor Marcus Thorne was looking right at him. There was no smile, no gloat, just a slow, considering gaze, as if observing a necessary but unpleasant piece of city maintenance. Then the light turned green, and the car drove away, smooth and silent. Henderson felt a rage so pure and hot he thought his heart would explode. He was nothing to the mayor. Less than nothing. A bug that had been not squashed, but put into a jar to be watched. Meanwhile, Dawson was drowning in a different way. His world had become a small, stuffy classroom at Meridian Community College. He was the oldest person in his History of Policing in Urban America class by at least a decade. The professor, a sharp, older black woman named Dr. Evans, seemed to take a particular interest in him. "Officer Dawson," she would say, her voice cutting through the dry, academic air. "From your perspective, how did the broken windows theory of the 80s contribute to the current climate of mistrust in communities like Crestview?" He would stammer, fumble for an answer, feeling the eyes of the students on him. They saw his uniform, his short hair, and they judged him. He started reading the assigned texts not to pass, but to survive. He read about the Tuskegee experiments, about redlining, about the war on drugs being declared not in the streets, but in political strategy sessions. He saw the patterns, the systems, the machinery of oppression that he had been a tiny, mindless cog in. The guilt became a weight he carried everywhere. He started skipping the mandatory public appearances, telling Henderson he was studying. Instead, he would drive back to Crestview alone, without the uniform, and just walk. He bought a coffee from a corner store and sat on a park bench. An older man, the same one who had shouted at them during that first terrible town hall, recognized him. "You're that cop," the man said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. Dawson just nodded, expecting a confrontation. The man sat down next to him. "You look lost, son." And for reasons he didn't understand, Dawson started talking. He talked about the pressure, about Henderson, about the feeling that he was on the wrong side of something huge and he didn't know how to get off. The man, whose name was Walter, listened. He didn't offer absolution. He just said, "Knowing is one thing, doing is another." The final crack in the dam came with Dawson's thesis assignment. The topic, assigned by Mayor Thorne himself through Dr. Evans, was accountability and restorative justice, a case study of a single incident. Dawson knew, with a sickening certainty, what incident he was meant to study. He was being forced to autopsy his own crime. He requested the file from Internal Affairs. The request was approved instantly, another silent confirmation that this was all a scripted play and he was just reading his lines. The file was thin, too thin. It contained the basic arrest report, but none of the supporting evidence. No dash cam footage log, no body cam footage, no audio record. It was as if the event had been surgically cleansed from the record, leaving only the dry, bureaucratic bones of Henderson's lies. His heart pounding, Dawson went to the evidence archives. The clerk, a bored-looking civilian, typed the case number into his computer. "Yeah, it's here, but it's under a mayoral seal. No access without direct authorization from the mayor's chief of staff." "Sorry, pal. A mayoral seal." Dawson felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. The mayor hadn't just hidden it. He had legally buried it, and he had made sure Dawson would hit this exact wall. This was the test. This was the doing Walter had talked about. He drove to City Hall. He didn't have an appointment. He just walked in his college student clothes feeling like a poor disguise. He asked to see the mayor. The receptionist smiled politely and said he was unavailable. Dawson stood his ground, his voice shaking but determined. Please tell him it's Officer Dawson. I need to talk to him about the incident on Laurel Street. 15 minutes later, he was ushered into the mayor's office. It was a large, quiet room with a stunning view of the city Marcus Thorne governed. The mayor was standing by the window, his back to the door. He turned around. He didn't look surprised. Officer Dawson, how was the coursework proceeding? Dawson didn't bother with pleasantries. The words tumbled out. I can't write the paper, sir. The evidence from that night, it's sealed. I can't access it. How can I do a case study without the case? Marcus gestured to a chair. Dawson remained standing. The mayor's expression was unreadable. Some things are sealed for a reason, officer. To protect the integrity of an ongoing process. To protect the city. What process? Dawson asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Henderson is in a traffic vest cleaning cameras. I'm in community college. What are you protecting? Marcus walked to his desk and picked up a small, sleek remote. He pointed it at a screen embedded in the wall. The process of justice, Officer Dawson, not the kind you find in a courtroom. The screen flickered to life. It showed multiple angles of the banquet hall. High definition, clear audio. There was Henderson, drunk and red-faced, making his disgusting speech. Dawson watched himself in the corner of the frame, looking down at his shoes, a portrait of misery and shame. This was released to the fraternity's national leadership, Marcus said calmly. They, in turn, have shared it with every major news outlet in the state. It goes public at 6 o'clock tonight. Dawson's legs felt weak. The world was tilting. Why? Why would you do that? You had it sealed. You protected us. I never protected you, Marcus said, his voice dropping, finally losing its bureaucratic calm and revealing the steel beneath. I contained you. I let the infection fester in a controlled environment so the body could reject it more completely. Henderson's words, his true self, will now be seen by everyone. The public will demand his resignation. The department will have no choice but to comply. His career is over. His name is mud. He will never work in law enforcement again. He will be a punchline. That is the justice he chose for himself that night. I just gave him a larger audience. He turned his gaze to Dawson. It was penetrating, weighing, judging. And you came here. You asked for the truth. You tried to access the file. You passed. Dawson stared, confused. Passed what? The test, Marcus said. The city doesn't need more Hendersons. But it might need cops who are capable of learning, who feel shame, who seek the truth, even when it's difficult. Your assignment is changed. You will resign from the Bridge Builder program. You will submit a transfer request to the Youth Outreach Division. You will work with the kids in Crestview. You will report to Walter, and you will finish that thesis. For real this time. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a conditional surrender, a chance to start over from the very bottom, under the mayor's unforgiving eye. That evening, at exactly 6 o'clock, the video exploded across the news. Henderson was at a dive bar, still in his orange jumpsuit, when it came on the television above the liquor bottles. The sound was muted, but the captions told the story. He saw his own bloated, hateful face filling the screen. The other patrons, a mix of blue-collar workers and dead ends, turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of disgust and mockery. The bartender walked over and wordlessly took his beer away. Hey, Henderson slurred. We don't serve your kind in here, the bartender said quietly, his eyes hard. Henderson looked from the TV to the faces around him. The full, devastating scope of his ruin finally landed. He had nowhere to go. He was utterly and completely alone. He stumbled out into the alley behind the bar, the weight of his fall crushing him, and he was sick in the gutter. High above the city, in his quiet office, Mayor Marcus Thorne turned off the television. The revenge was complete. It had not been swift or violent. It had been patient, psychological, and absolute. He had not broken the law. He had used it. He had not raised his voice. He had used their own. He had given Henderson the rope to hang himself and Dawson a shovel to dig his way out. The city was safer for it. The balance, in some small way, had been restored. He looked out at the glittering lights of Meridian, a city he loved and protected in his own way, and for the first time since that night under the broken streetlight, he allowed himself to feel at peace. The score was settled.